problem statement as well as some concepts which you'll use to solve the problem statement, right? So this is the cyberbotics.com website from where you can download the VBot simulator. So if you would have seen, you would have also been given this link to the IMAS practice arena, and here there's a detailed instructions on how to install VBots in both Windows as well as Linux, right? So you go here, and for Windows people, you can install through Windows installer. For Ubuntu, you can use this, and for Mac, you can use this, right? And it will be similar to any normal software that you would have installed, and not like anything like Python or PyBullet or like any other NumPy or OpenCV you would have installed. It's a simple one, and it will just be like installing through this setup normal mode. So yeah, that's through it, and then you will just have to follow the prompts, next, install, and that will be it, right? So this is the VBot simulator. Then moving on to when you open the VBot simulator. So once you download it and install it, then you'll be opening the VBot simulator. So if you open it, right? So initially this won't come, right? So for that to happen, you need to install this, the IMAS Practice Arena. So the IMAS Practice Arena has been given, and you can install it by cloning the file. So basically, this is a Git repository which you can clone, and I'll not go into details of it, but basically think of it as downloading a file. So you can download it via zip. So just basically download it and then extract it. Or there's something known as GitHub Desktop, which you can use. And there's also the main thing that we generally use is cloning the repository. And its instructions are given here in the README itself. Here you can see that you need to install Git. There are tutorials also given. And then you basically open the command prompt and clone the repository. So this command you just execute in your terminal and you'll be good to go. So now when you open the VBot simulator, what will happen is, for example, if I want to create a new world, so I'll click on new world, right? And it will just show me this blank screen, right? And then you can add many things. So this is basically something where you can add a lot of things, and there are a lot of arenas and there are a lot of solids and shapes you can add. So one of these that we have made is the practice arena for you guys, and then obviously there will be the final arenas. So this is the practice arena. Okay, so this is the arena that you will be getting to practice on, and related to the problem statements, we have put in these different things related to the maze, as well as for the second problem statement, which involves OpenCV and Contour. These can be used for practicing that. So I'll explain on how to just navigate through this arena. So for example, if you want to change your viewpoint, for example, if you want to view it from somewhere else. So right now I am just scrolling through using my mouse. So I'm just scrolling in and scrolling out. So that way you can zoom in, zoom out. Now, if you press Control and the left mouse button together and hold them down and then rotate it, then you can basically rotate and see the arena from different angles. You can also zoom in and then you can view like this, you see, and there are different angles from which you can see the arena. And if you want, you can also change the arena viewpoint from here. So if you see here, there'll be basically a lot of things here. These basically represent all the things that are present in the arena. So you can see there are many solid boxes, right? And there is a rectangle arena, and there are lights, and basically this represents the whole world that you'll be working in. And this is the viewpoint. So you can change the parameters of the viewpoint, like changing the orientation, changing the position. For example, if I change this, for example, if I make this 1.3 instead of 2.3, so I went a little bit down. So that is why when I changed this, I went a bit down. And yeah, so you can change all of these things to change the viewpoint. Now, for example, if you want to shift something, for example, if you want to shift this box from here to here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm clicking on shift, and I am holding down the left mouse button, and I am moving it. So I can move this also. So this you can do in the practice arena, but in the final arena, this will not be allowed. So all the positions of the objects will be fixed. Like you won't be able to move them, and they'll be evaluated via that. So yeah, but you can in practice arena for practicing you can do that. And these, as you know, are for the round two, and this maze type thing is for round one to practice that. So now basically I'll introduce you to the robot that we'll be using. So this is the robot that we'll be using. It's called an epoch robot, right? So I'll just zoom in a bit. So yeah, so this is the robot that you will be using, and this is called an epoch. And you can see here when I select epoch, it automatically selects this robot. So you can see obviously that this is the epoch, and these are some of its properties. So basically, if you see here, there will be translation, that is the position of the robot in the arena, its rotation, basically how much it's it has been rotated by along each axis, its name, its controller. So I'll come on to the controller later on. And then if you want, for example, you can change the camera width, height, etc. And there are many other things. So if you want, you can play with them, but I suggest you not to do so. Basically, we have configured it such so that it's suitable for you. And the best you can do is basically you can change the controller. So here, this is the main thing that we'll be using to control the robot. So now you don't have to change anything in the arena. The arena is itself here. The boxes are here. The objects are here. The only thing you can do is you can change the position of the robot. You can change the position of the robot, and that's good. And then you can edit your own controller. So if you can see here, I have right now using the practice arena controller. So if there is nothing written here, you can basically go on select, and there will be a list of controllers. So these are some of the inbuilt controllers that they have, but you can't use them. You'll have to use your own controller which you build. Okay. So this is these are of the some of the pre-built controllers. And if you, for example, click on void, so void controller basically will do nothing. So whenever you play the simulation, it will do nothing. So that's a list of controllers. Now I'll tell you how to set up your own controller. So setting up your own controller is pretty easy. You go to wizards, you go to new robot controller, and then as this pops up, it says this wizard will help you creating a new controller. So you click on next. Then as the language that we'll be using for this event is Python, you click on Python, and then you can specify any name. For example, iMaze. I write iMaze and I go on next. It tells me that okay, the files will be created in this folder, and I've clicked on okay, open iMaze in the text editor, and I finish. So now I have a new iMaze controller here, which has already some things defined. So now I'll move on to explaining what these things are exactly. So the controller is basically what controls the robot, right? So for that so this is the controller that we built, and we need to specify some things in order so that we can use them in simulation. So this is the first import statement. So like a normal library, it's just from controller import robot, right? And I'll just move on to the practice in the controller so that you can have a more good view of what I have done. So from controller, import robot, motor, distance sensor, and camera. So basically, these are the things that you'll be using to solve the problem statement, right? So you will be using distance sensors for problem statement one. You will be using camera for problem statement two, and obviously you have to use the motors and actuate them, like make them move, so that for both the cases, right? And obviously you need to import robot as well. So basically robot is equal to robot. So here what it does is it basically creates a robot instance. It tells you, okay, this is a robot, and you get all its properties in this robot variable. So this is basically, you can think of it as a function. So this function basically assigns some value to it. And now this variable has many things which you can use. So now you have this time step. So time step is basically how much after how much time every step will get executed. So every step needs to have a time gap, for example, 1 millisecond or 64 milliseconds, after which that step is executed. So basically this gets you the current time step of the current world, and you need not change anything in here, right? Now this is what I have done. So basically here first we initialize the motor. So before moving on to the simulation, we need to initialize everything. We need to initialize the motors, we need to initialize the distance sensors, we need to initialize the cameras. So first up, we have the different motors, left and right. So obviously, epoch is a two-wheeled robot. There are only two wheels, so only two motors. The left motor we basically initialize by this function called get device. So anything you try to initialize, whether it be motors, sensors, anything, you will be using the get device function. So this is important. So get device function what does is robot.get device left wheel motor. So obviously it's pretty clear that it returns whatever the left wheel motor is. So you will basically store what left motor is in here. Then similarly, the right wheel motor you pass in and it returns the right motor, right? And then you can, so now this left motor, right motor has some functions which you can use to make it move, right? So left motor dot set position float infinity. So what I've done here is there are two types of control mechanisms in robotics. There is one is position control and velocity control. For you guys, like there are two things: position control and velocity control. So here the first two lines refer to position control. So what I mean by position control is, for example, the left motor can move by a certain amount of radians. For example, it can move by 5 radians, 10 radians, 20 radians, and it can even move 360 pi radian and stuff like that. So this is what I did here is set position to float of infinity. So basically I passed infinity in it, because for example, had I passed any other real value, then what would have happened is it would have gone to that much radians. It would the both the motors which have would have rotated that much radians, and then they would have stopped and they would have not gone further. So now that I have initialized this to infinity, it will always move. Like it will always try to go forward. And now I can control it via velocity control method. So these are the functions: set velocity, which you can use to control the velocity. Now you don't have to worry about set position and everything that you have initialized it via infinity. Now you can use set velocity. So left motor dot set velocity 0, right motor dot set velocity 0. So basically initially I have done that it does not go anywhere and it stays at a particular like at a particular position as its velocity 0, right? So here I've defined the max speed, and then yeah, so now we have initialized the left motor, the left and right motors. Now we need to initialize the proximity sensor, so the distance sensors, as you say. So I have made a list, as you know, as you would have learned in the previous workshops, a Python list. Then I have a for loop. So the epoch robot, I'll just show you what exactly the epoch robot looks like. So if you go here, robots and epoch, yeah. So this is the epoch robot, as you can see. So here, what there are exactly seven distance sensors. I will show just one minute. So yeah, so here you can see there are 7 distance sensors: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and these are all around the epoch. But you will be only using 4 distance sensors, that is the PS5, the PS2, PS7, and PS0. So these 4 sensors are sufficient enough to solve both the problem statements. Like it will be only required in the first problem statement, second may it isn't required. So here we have the PS5 for the left, which is the left distance sensor, PS2, which is the right distance sensor, and these are the front distance sensors which you can combine. And then obviously there is a camera here which we will be using in problem statement 2. So this is the thing. Now what I've done here is basically I have, for I in range 8, I have defined a name which is basically PS0, PS1, corresponding to whatever the value of I is, PS0, PS1, PS2 till PS7. And then I have appended the robot.getDevice. So it's the same as robot.getDevice here. You take in some motor via specifying some name here. So I have specified PS0 here. So PS0, then PS1 would go here, PS2 would go here, and whatever this would return, it would get appended here in the proximity sensor list. So once it gets appended in the proximity sensor list, for that time step, what you do is enable. So this is required for any type of sensor, whether it be a camera or a distance sensor. You need to enable it with that time step. So the time step that I got here for the simulation, you need to enable this this sensor. So basically I enable that, and yeah, so that is initializing, this whole is for initializing our distance sensors. Now moving on to the camera. So camera is also the same, camera.getDevice camera and camera.enable one. So basically you can use time step also here. There is no restriction as such. I did one, and what this means is the number of milliseconds. So as I had mentioned one, so it would update the image at every 1 millisecond. If you keep it 1,000, the image will be updated at every 1 second. So that's the thing. Now here I've written a rudimentary code for moving forward. So moving forward, as you know, is basically both the wheels go forward and that's it. So basically left motor dot set velocity speed and right motor dot set velocity speed. And how did I take in that speed? So this is basically a function called move forward, wherein what I've done is I've defined this function, and if speed is greater than 100, so by mistake, for example, if I put speed equal to 110 and its maximum speed is 100, so it will just make it 100 and it will make sure that it doesn't go out of range. And here speed is equal to max speed by 100 into speed. So this is pure maths, it's nothing. Basically max speed is the max speed that the robot can go, the motors can go, and here I've defined it to be 6.27, right? So to not make it very difficult and to make it easier to visualize, what I've done is 6.27 by 100. So basically it will divide it into 100 different pieces, and then whatever speed you give, it will basically take that amount of speed. So if I specify 100 exactly, it will take 6.27 speed maximum. Otherwise you will have to remember, okay, that I have to put it at the 6.27, or the value needs to be at 5.54 or something that is less than 6.27. But here you can basically specify anything from 1 to 100 and this will work, right? And this is basically setting the velocity for moving forward. Then we have a function called as front IR reading. So this is basically math.floor, basically taking the floor value of these two sensors. So for getting the value of any like getting the distance via any distance sensor, you need to use the function get value. So as you saw here, I had stored many number of proximity sensors in this list. So I basically access PS0, which is I told you, which is the front one of the front sensors, and PS7, and I just get their values and I add them and I return its floor value. Then I use left IR reading, which is basically the fifth, PS5, and right IR, which is PS2, right? And I get their values. And right now for this, I've just written a normal function. So this is basically the where your simulation starts. So above all this, it was basically just initializing things and defining functions, and think you can think of it as a main function of Python or C++. So yeah, so while robot step time steps. So basically, you don't need to understand this. Like it's basically after every time step, this will happen, and this is to ensure that there is no error and stuff. So yeah, you can do this, and then basically move forward. So here, whatever you want to do with your like images and distance sensors and anything, and via move forward and stuff, you can do this. So basically, I'll show you how to basically I just play this controller. And yeah, one more thing, like for example, if you are in this position, for example, in the position I am in the world, and you want to reset it, for example, to the normal configuration, so you basically click on this button. This is the reset simulation button, and yeah, so that's it again as to the normal situation that it was in. Now I just play this. So for example, if I am doing like this, for example, I've rotated the bot and I wanting to, so basically you see as I've linked the controller here, this practice arena controller. Okay, so this is the controller here. And for example, if I make this one again, so yeah, that's it. And yeah, I guess we are, so you can see here that the robot is moving, and here there's a camera overlay. So you can easily like see that the camera image and the robot is also moving here. So obviously I've just put in the move forward command and there's nothing else. So it's just moving via move forward. And yeah, but in the PS, obviously you'll have to implement left and right functions as well. Okay. So I'll just explain how those left and right functions work. So there's something known as differential drive. So what differential drive does is, like for example, you want to turn left, right? If you want to turn left, then what you do is you make the velocity of the left motor less and the velocity of the right motor more. So what happens is the right motor will want to cover more distance and the left motor will want to cover less distance. So it will form sort of a circle kind of thing, right? Where the left motor is on the trajectory of the inner radius and the right motor is on the trajectory of the outer radius. So it basically forms sort of a circle kind of thing and it moves towards the left. And for example, if you want to go towards the right, then you decrease the speed of the right motor, increase the speed of the left motor, and then it will basically form a circle where it moves towards the right. So the key concept here would be that if the velocity, if you want to move it left, keep the velocity of, for example, this for the exam, yeah, speed. So what this will do is I have decreased the velocity of the left motor and I've increased the velocity of the right motor. So this will move left. So yeah, for example, I put it here, and if I play here, 1 minute. For example, you can do this also. Like what I generally do is, so you can see here that the bot is rotating. So if you wanted to rotate on a on a single point, this will happen. So as you can see, it's rotating, and this is minus speed and speed. Now, if you change the velocity here from minus speed to anything, then it won't rotate about its point, but rather it would go forward and take a left turn or right turn. So if you want to make a sharp left turn or a sharp right turn, then you need to specify both the velocities to be opposite. And if you want to make it move in sort of a circle like a thing, you need to specify some other value in minus speed instead of minus speed, right? In between minus speed and speed. So yeah, that is the thing. So you can see here it's rotating. And yeah, when you want to pause the simulation, you can pause it via this. You want to play again, you do this. If you want to fast forward it, you can also fast forward it. And if you want to reset, yeah, this is the thing. So basically, this is the practice arena which you can use. So I basically showed you how to use these functions. And yeah, so the camera, so I have not mentioned about how to use the camera. So basically, this is the camera function. So as I initialize the camera up ahead, yeah, here, camera is robot.getDevice camera. So now what I've done here is camera.getImageArray. So it basically will give you the image into whatever you store it. So I've stored it in RGB, and then you can process it as you do in OpenCV and anything. So it's basically normal Python only, and you can do it via normal that OpenCV thing. And if you want to import anything, you can simply import, for example, import NumPy as NP, right? And import CV2. So this won't mess up with the Python because this is not normal Python script. So no need to worry. And yeah, so this is basically a practice arena controller, basically implementing just forward motion, but you can use it for left, right as well. So yeah, so this is the first thing. And yeah, so I have said a lot of things right now, and some of you might not have gotten exactly all the things. So I have mentioned everything here as well. So these things have been mentioned as to how to load the arena in the README file as well, right? And if you see here, controller generation also has been, how to create your controller has also been mentioned here, and then connecting your controller as well has also been mentioned. And then I have given the helper functions of eBots as well here. So if you see here in the README, there have been given these left motor, right motor initializations, and all the things that I said, like actuation of the motors, initializing sensors, initializing camera, and then reading values through them. So all these have been mentioned here. You can go through this also. And I'll also, there's one more thing, like for example, when you open this CyberBotics, so VBots is an open source simulator and it has a very like highly documented manual. So if you can see here, there's a user guide. So if you click on here, there'll be a lot of things. And basically, I also started learning from here only. So this is actually a very good resource to understand what VBots actually is. And for example, if you go here to the tutorial section, you will basically, and there are a lot of things here showing you how to, interact with VBots and make your own controller and arenas. So obviously arenas and appearance and stuff we have already done for you. You need to work on the controller part, that is making a controller, and everything is here mentioned. So there'll be some more details, like here if you can see initialize robot. So if you want, you can go into the details, and yeah, and so here also you can see you need to click on Python to get the exact syntax for everything. So if it's showing C or C++, then make sure to click on Python so that you know, okay, this is the way. And for example, here you can see Python. So yeah, so that's the thing. And now I'll move on to showing you the first, uh, like the first PS. So yeah, which is the file. So yeah, this is the final first problem statement that you'll be using. So this is the maze that you have to solve. And if I play it, you can see it's moving, and I fast forward it. So you can see here that it's able to turn when there is a wall in front. It sees a wall in front of it, and everything has been done using distance sensor. So you can see here there is a camera, like there's a camera overlay here as well, but it's not showing anything because I haven't used camera at all. Whereas in that previous section, I had used a camera. That's why it was doing. So if you see here, this is the simulation, and it's trying to solve the maze. And yeah, it might lag a bit. I'm sorry for that. The internet connection might not be that good. But yeah, so this is it. And yeah, so basically you need to solve this maze via distance sensors and differential drive. So as I explained, differential drive, how to move left, how to move right. That is the concept. And yeah, so this is it. And this is basically the first PS. And I guess the second PS, Raghav can explain a bit more in detail. So I'll basically hand over to him now. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Now we'll move towards the second PS. Before introducing you to the second PS, I'd like to brush up some concepts of computer vision that were left in the previous workshop. Can you hear me? I'm audible, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, let's just take a look at some of the concepts in OpenCV that will be used in the second round. So first of all, I guess you have studied thresholding in your previous HSV color scheme and thresholding in your previous workshops. So I'll just pick up from there. So in this, I'm trying to show you how to detect contours in an image. Okay, so just see this as a sample image. So here I have four shapes: rectangle, circle, square, and triangle. So here is a code which you can follow. So what I'm doing is I'm just reading that image. It is stored in the same directory as this file, contours.py, and I'm reading that image. I'm resizing it. I guess you're familiar with all these functions. Okay, so I'm resizing it to 400 by 400 pixels. I'm just showing it, displaying it, and then I'm converting its color scheme to BGR, which is the default color scheme of the OpenCV, to HSV. Okay, now I want to threshold this blue color. Okay, so for thresholding this blue color, I'm using the lower color range of HSV 97123. You can like just figure it out yourself and try some random values to achieve the right thresholding. And then I'm just applying a blur, median blur. Basically it just blurs the image in order to reduce the noise. When you threshold the image, when you threshold the image yourself, you will see that many of the times wrong pixels get thresholded. Like this is the blue color here, you are providing this range, but you will see here and there many small pixels will also get thresholded. So to remove that noise, we just blur the image. Blurring the image is just making, like, you must be familiar with the blur. When you take a picture with like in a portrait mode in a camera or something, the background gets blurred. Yeah, just that similar kind of blurring is happening here. It's just taking the value pixels and just averaging it over the neighborhood or something. Just consider it as a normal blur. So you can ignore this if you want to. And then just I'm showing that HSV image which I had loaded, and then I'm just getting the mask of that image. I hope you are familiar with it. I just thresholded the image using that. I've passed that HSV image. I've introduced the lower color range which I want to be there, and the upper color range which I want to be there. I hope you are familiar with this from the last workshop, and then I'm just showing that masked image. Okay, and this line of code is like to extract that blue circle from the image. I'll just run that code, I guess, to make things a little bit more clearer. So here is it the original image. Here's the HSV converted image, which you can see on my screen. Here's the masked image, and it is just I have cropped that mask from the original image. What this line does is just cropping that mask from the original image, giving me that white values, giving that blue value where it was, and rest of them are black. So here you can see that a small pixels, if you pay attention, these are also getting thresholded, even though they do not lie in the range which I want them to lie in. Probably they are white, but they are still there in the thresholded image. So this is what you will call as noise in image. Okay, and there are many methods to deal with this noise, to remove those noise, as they can cause some problems while solving the problem statement, but we won't need them right now. You can dig into it later if you want to. It'll be an interesting thing to explore. So what we are doing here is we are trying to detect contours in this image. Now just follow me, and I'll tell you what a contour is basically is. So a contour basically is a set of continuous pixels with same value connected to each other. So here this circle, if you can see, all of the pixels in this are white and all of them are connected to each other. So this circle will form a single contour. Okay, so any closed shape can form a single contour. Here if you see this triangle, all the pixels are green and all are connected to each other. So this triangle will form a single contour. Here this square can also be regarded as a contour. A rectangle can be regarded as a contour. So it's easy to detect contours in a masked image. If you remember from your last workshop, a masked image is a binary image. All of the pixels in the binary image are either 0 or either 1. So here the value from one pixel to the another pixel, the value of two green pixels is not necessarily always the same. Okay, it can vary a little bit, but because of noise and other factors, but yeah, one will remain one and the zero will remain zero. So that's why we do a contour detection on a masked image. And we could detect contours is just what we are doing. What we are trying to achieve by detecting contours is trying to detect the closed shapes in a mask. Like how many closed shapes are there, how many closed loops are there. So here we get one circle. This will be detected as a contour. Okay, but here you also have the noise along with the closed contours. You'll have this small pixels. If you see where my mouse pointer is, there's a small pixel. This will also be regarded as a contour because I guess it will contain 2 to 3 pixels or more pixels, and they have the same value and they are connected to each other. So they fit the definition of a contour. So this will also be a contour, and this also will be a contour. So this is a function to detect contours in a masked image. So here, this is a function that is pre-built into OpenCV. I'm just doing cv2.find contours. Here I'm doing mask color. Mask color is just the variable in which this mask was stored. And then I'm just doing the kind of contours I want in return. Like you can get a lot of information about the contours. Like you can get their positions, all the pixels that are connected together. So this is just a flag that states that yeah, I want an array of all the pixels that are inside that contour. Okay, and this is the kind of approximation you want. Like this is also a flag that is not like I won't like to go in detail. You just have to use these. I'm just briefing you up with this is just the kind of in which form you want the contours, and this is what approximation you want to apply. Like there will be a lot of pixels here, man. Like it's a 400 into 400 image, and if I crop it, it will be around 15 to 50. So getting all the information about every pixel is not, it will be like waste of memory. So I just apply this chain approx, because to get only the major pixels that are there, like the OpenCV will work it on its own and you don't have to worry about it. All you need to know is that this is the function to extract contours in an image, and it will return you these contours and the garbage value which we just receive in this any variable. Like I have written here _1, you can give it any name like garbage or anything. It's just because this is a function. Okay, this is a Python function which I'm calling, and it will return two values. So I have to receive two values, otherwise the Python will give me an error. So in the first one, I'm receiving all the contours that are in the image, and second is just garbage value which we do not use. So you can just receive it and let it be there. Okay, so then I'm just, so first I check the length of contours. So contours will be a list. Okay, so it will be a list of all the contours that are present inside this image. So if the length of contours is bigger than and equal to 1, see in the last I've printed this length of contours. So I'll just show you in the terminal. Even in this image 17 contours are being detected. Here it is coming output as 17. So yeah, one is this major circle and all the others 16 of them are just noises here and there. It's just noises here and there, here and there, it'll be all the noises. Okay, so what will I do to avoid the noises and to just concentrate on the circle? I'll know that obviously the noises will be very small. Okay, so noises have to be small. The first thing I do is, first, is there any contour is being detected in my image or not? So for that, this contours that I'm getting in return, it will have that many lists inside it as there are contours in this image. So if the length of contours is coming out to be 17, then these contours variable has 17 sublists inside it. So I just check there are any contours being detected or not, are being detected in my image or not. So I do this with the help of this code. Length of contour should be bigger than or equal to 1. That means yeah, at least one contour has been detected in my image. Okay, so then I just sort, by default when you get these contours from this function now, they are sorted in an increasing order. So the contour with the in increasing order of the area, so the contour with the minimum area would be the first one and the contour with the maximum area would be the last one. So I just here a pre-built, here I use a pre-built function that is in Python to sort that contours in a decreasing order. So I want my contours to be sorted in a decreasing order of their by their area. Okay, so what I do is here I pass this contour as a list, then I give it a key. You can read about this sorted function of Python in any documentation online. So what I do is, first argument is I pass that the contours list which I have given, and then I tell it how to sort it, on what basis do I have to sort it. So I just give it that yeah, cv2.contour area returns me the area of a particular contour. So if I pass inside it a single contour, it's a list of contours, it will return me a list of contours. And if I pass inside it a single contour, it will return me the area of that contour. So I'm just giving this sorted function key that yeah, I want to sort my list on the basis that you take every single element of it and pass it within the cv2.contour area function, and on based on what it returns, just sort my all the list on the area, on the basis of the area of each contour. And in this is a flag in which I'm giving reverse equals to true. That means I want my list to be sorted in a decreasing order. By default the sorted function sorts the list in an increasing order. So by using reverse equals to true, I'm just telling it yeah, I want it in the decreasing order. So when I do contours equals to this, then I in this all of my contours that are being detected in this image are now stored inside this in a list in the decreasing order. So the first contour I can access it with the help of 0. Okay, yeah, the list, the first element of the list, contours of 0. So this is the contour that I want to use, because I know if I see this image, my noises will be very small. In most of the cases, if you are doing thresholding right, okay, the noise would be very small in images, and that your contour would be a big one. So another condition I'm using to like just filter the noise is that the contour area of my biggest contour must be bigger than 500. This 500 is a random value that you can choose on based on experimentation. Like here just I found that the area, I printed this area and I was able to see that the contour is being detected in the mask, and so the area was coming around like 4000 or 5000. So I just kept a minimum value key. If my area is bigger than 500, then it is a contour that I need. It may be a circle or it may be a shape that I need. Otherwise it's just noise. Because the noise can be small, and so the small pixels will have smaller area. So this is just this condition I have put to filter that noise. You should know how to filter noise, it'll be very important. So two ways to filter noise. First you have to detect, yeah, is there contour, are contours being detected in my image or not. Most of the time they'll be detected because the noise will always be detected. Doesn't matter if your main contour is being detected or not. So then sort your contours in form in decreasing order of their area, then calculate the area of the first contour and see if it is bigger than a experimental threshold. This is just an experimental value, and based on your image size and based on your purpose or application, you can play with it and adjust it according to your need and see if the results are what you want or not. So I'm just using this as a condition to filter noise. So yeah, if the contour of the area of my first contour is bigger than a particular value, say 500, then I'm sure, yeah, this is the contour I wanted. This is not noise. This is not these extra pixels that are creeping in. This is the contour I wanted. So then I calculate the centroid of this contour. Okay. So I want the centroid of this contour. So this is the code to get the centroid of that contour. So this is a function cv2.moments. So what moments function is do is it gives you basic characteristics of a contour. I won't go into much detail. You can go into the mathematical details, the mathematical concepts of moments, and you can dig into it later. But here you won't need the mathematics or anything. You just need that, yeah, I am using this OpenCV function. It is already pre-built into OpenCV, and I'm passing my first contour into it. Okay, contours of 0. I'm just passing the first contour into it, and in return, it will give me a dictionary. I hope you are familiar with the Python dictionary. So in M, there is being a dictionary stored, and this moments just return me a few features of my contours on using which I can calculate its area again, or if I want its centroid, the center point of the contour, the center of mass, then I can calculate with the help of these moments. So first I check if the moments should not be empty. Okay, if the moments are empty, that means I have done some error, if the contour was not detected correctly or it's just too small or anything. So I just put this condition if this is just a dictionary, yeah, so it is just a variable inside the dictionary which I'm referring to, so this should not be 0. So if this is not 0, then the x coordinate of my centroid is given by this m10 by m00. Like, you can go into details, if you can refer to the documentation if you want to go into details, but basically if you search on Google how to calculate a centroid of a contour using moments OpenCV, then yeah, you'll find this formula everywhere. So it's just referring to the dictionary, and cx is given by this moment divided by this moment, and the y coordinate of the centroid, y coordinate would be along this line, x coordinate would be along this line. So yeah, the x coordinate is given by this, y coordinate is given by this. So now then you can print this cx, the x coordinate, which you will use majorly. The y would not be of much use to you. Then the contour area and the length of the contours. So here, as you can see, if I print this is the x coordinate. If my image was 400 into 400, so yeah, x coordinate is coming out to be 292. It's lying somewhere here, the x coordinate of the centroid. The area of this small circle is coming out to be 5000 something. So here you can see how large it is. As compared to the noise, it will be very large. And the length of contours, total number of contours that are being detected in this image are 17. Okay, so this is the contour detection, and it will come in handy while you solve the second PS of your the second problem statement of the event. So if you have any doubts, you can just go ahead and ask me if you would need anything to be repeated or anything was not clear. Okay, so one thing more I would like to tell you is that you previously yes told you how to use the camera function. So how, if you want to like use it using OpenCV, like convert that image into OpenCV, you can do one thing, like just save that image using this command camera dot. This is the camera image of the camera function of the vboards. So you just do camera dot save image. You given the image name and you given the quality of the image. It's just 100 I have put, yeah, the maximum quality that is possible. And then I read that image, I resize it, I convert its scheme to HSV, and then I use it to threshold and to detect contours and whatever is required to solve my PS. Okay, so as you can see, where your controller would be kept now, if your controller is kept here, then this image will be saved here. So if image is saved here, you can just load it into CV2 again, like using CV2 you can load it again and use it to perform your task. So I'll now just like to introduce you to the second PS. So the second PS, as you would have, I got it already, and we have a long tradition of releasing theme based PS. So yeah, just here we are at the end of PS1, and the PS second, those who clear the, yeah.
First PS भी समझा दे. First PS.
Okay, so first we come at the first PS. So first PS, yeah. So we have a long tradition of having theme-based PS to make stuff interesting for you. So here we have the new season of WandaVision is coming just around the corner. So we have based a PS based on that only. So here Wanda is searching for Vision. So here is a Wanda, and it needs to reach Vision, who has been kidnapped by SWORD agency. And so in this problem statement in the first round, you cannot use the camera that is mounted on this epoch. Yes, has explained you the various features of epoch. This is a robot with 2 wheels. Okay, so it has 7 proximity sensor, but proximity sensors tell you, they give you the information if there is a wall or obstacle nearby or not. So you can use those 7 proximity sensors to detect where you are, like if there are any walls near you or not. But you cannot use the camera function is the first PS. I hope that's clear to you. So what you have to do using that proximity sensors and the functions to move forward, left or right, turn left and right about the axis or move forward, you have to reach at the center of this maze. So for example, if your robot goes till here and it encounters, yeah, there's a wall in the front and there is a wall on the left. So I should now move right. So first you'll turn right and then move forward. And similarly, you'll just follow that and get to the center of that vision. So yeah, there are some rules I hope you would have got the PS and you would have gone through it. Once the robot start running from here, you will just, it would should be fully autonomous and you can't interrupt in between. And it will start here and the round will end once it reaches the that board that is kept in between. There will be 4 distance sensors, like I guess 2 in the front, 1 at the left, 1 at the right. We have been introduced that the epoch have 7 proximity sensors, distance sensors, but I guess 4 of them would be enough to solve this maze. And on the pre-built functions also, you'll be provided only with the 4 distance sensors, and they'll give you the value of distance of the wall. And you can see, like if there is no wall nearby, the value of them would be somewhere in the lower range, and if there are wall nearby or an obstacle nearby, then the value would go to a higher range. So you can figure it out, the threshold that you want according to your need, and it should detect the walls and just make its way through the maze. So it's the robot, it has been already explained to you by Yash. So it'll be the epoch robot. It has 7 distance sensors and a 1 forehead camera. So please note, you cannot use the forehead camera in this case, and anyways it won't be of much use even if you go for it. And there are the rules. It should be completely autonomous. Once it starts, there is no interruptions in between. It should go from the start of the arena to the end of the arena on its own. And the maximum time allotted for each team would be 5 minutes. So you should be able to solve this arena within 5 minutes. And the faster you go and the smoother you go, the more marks you get and the more highly you would be rewarded for the round. And only 3 restarts are allowed in the 5-minute time limit. Like if your bots malfunction or something in the between, then only 3 restarts would be allowed to you. And the scoring rules will be decided by the judges, and only they will be disclosed after the event. And note that we won't be giving you access to this PS beforehand. You can practice as much as you want on the practice arena that will be provided to you, that was shown to you by Yash. And this PS only we will use to evaluate your bot. So you can just speculate the code and write it, and it should run fine on the PS. You won't have access to this arena until the day of the event. So you can just practice on the practice arena, and your bot will be tested on this arena. So code according to that. And if you use any kind of plagiarism, we'll check for it definitely, and you will be disqualified if 2 teams have the same code. If the codes are similar to some extent that is not acceptable, then both of them would be disqualified. Okay, and no manual interruption while the bot is being moved. So once you clear this round 1, those who clear this round 1 would get a chance to appear in the round 2. So round 2, this was majorly based on your abilities to control the bot and using distance sensors and everything. And in the round 2, we'll switch to computer vision.
Yeah, so 1 second, Raghav, 1 second. Can you just keep the PS1 itself in the screen once?
Okay.
I'd just like to add on a single point. Yeah, just go to the isometric view of round 1 or some other good pick of it. Yeah, this will be good. Yeah. So guys, as explained by Yash and Raghav here, so the basic functions and everything are going to be the same, right? So all of you will be having the same sensors, the same robot, the same simulation, and then the same functions even. Everything is going to be the same, right? So where exactly can you make a difference is these two aspects, like what Raghav said now, the smoothness and the time in which you finish, right? So basically, the simplest strategy would be to avoid collision, and basically when you find a way to go there. But you guys can get more and more creative. So how can one solution differ from other? I hope most of you will be able to solve it, but who will be the one who will be the best, right? So what how we exactly will be evaluating the exact scoring details will be disclosed, but I would now suggest you to be as creative as possible. So for example, if you see this maze now, there are certain aspects that you can exploit. So if you are able to, so let's say you write a very simplest solution first and say, okay, there is no whenever there is a path, I will go through that, and then there is an obstacle, then that those directions I will disclose. So let's say there's front, back, left, and right, right, and then there is no obstacle in one direction, then that's the direction I will turn and go. So a simple strategy like this, and then once you build it and then that works, right, and then you can just go about thinking to optimize it further. So let us say there are these straight lines, right? So to some extent these straight lines, and there are ways in which I won't tell you how exactly, that's up to you to think and be creative. But the point being, so in these straight lines and all, you can try to accelerate your motion or increase the speed. Like you can have 2-3 different speeds that you have tuned. And like for example, when you're turning, right, definitely your robot should not be very fast, but when you are moving straight, right, you can go as fast as possible. That again, it should be tuned, and things like that are always there. So in that way you can complete it in a lesser time, so from some other team which is just relying on a simpler strategy, right? So there are many ways. So end of the day here, since it's an online event, right, so that you don't have the burden of making the robot, testing it for different failure conditions, nothing like that. So where exactly your brilliance or your creativity should be shown is how exactly you can optimize further and make sure you are far more better than a simpler solution. Just solving it should be your primary concern, and then you should optimize and enhance it further on. So give it a thought, try coming up with such strategies, and we'll be really looking up to the creativity of your approach or take on the problem also. So just keep this in mind. Yeah, this is just something I wanted to add on, Raghav. Yeah, you can continue.
Yeah, so second PS will go to the second PS. So here it just continues the first PS. In the first PS, the Wanda was trying to find the vision, and when it reaches the center of the maze, she finds out that it was just a trap, and now she has to reach vision, that is this red one block here, by defeating all the other Avengers that are waiting for her. So she should, here is your robot again, and what the robot has to do, it first has to move to the green block, hit it, then move to the blue block, hit it, then move to the purple block, hit it, and then move to the red block and hit it. So you can stop your bot in the this gray circle that is mentioned around 20 centimeter away from the block, and will consider that as a hit. So your bot has to follow this block, and it can stop anywhere in this region where my mouse pointer is. It can hit it completely, no issues, or it can stop up to 20 centimeter away from it, and then it. So here you'll use a forehead camera, and you can use as well as the proximity sensors, the proximity sensor that are in the front, the distance sensors, and as well as the camera. So here also is just a simple problem statement. So each match will have a maximum limit of 5 minutes. The bot will start from the starting point of the arena, which is here, and you won't be getting this PS to practice. That's for sure. You can practice only in the practice arena. This will be the where your final bot will be tested, final code will be tested, and the colors of the block would remain same. However, their position can change or their order can change. We'll inform you if the order is to be changed, then we'll inform you beforehand, but their positions can change for sure. There can be at random positions, but probably the order would remain same. The green block, then the blue block, then the purple block, and the red block. And all these blocks are, I guess, present in your practice arena for you to practice the thresholding. So this will be the block, then it has to hit each one box one by one in the same order in which they are kept, and then like take images from the forehead camera and go to that box and repeat it until you find the box, and just so on. Like you can go on in the arena if you're not able to, if your robot finds here and you, the green box is maybe somewhere hidden behind another box or something, so you should know how to search for it. If the, you have to hit the green block only first na, then you have to search for it. If it is not in right in front, it is in back, then you should train your robot to, yeah, just go in random direction and search for that block, and once it find that block, then it should move towards it and hit it. So yeah, when the box has been found, the robot should move towards it and should stop within 20 centimeter proximity of it. And you have to hit the boxes one by one in the order that is been satisfied in the, that has been specified in the PS. And yeah, so you will be using the epoch robot only for this task also. Is one forward camera and 7 distance sensors, and yeah, the forward camera would be used and the distance sensor would be used as well. So the bot should be completely autonomous. Once it starts, you should not touch your keyboard. It should move from one block to the other and end on the red block by all on its own. So you can't interrupt in between. It should be completely autonomous. So the same rule, you will be given 5 minutes to solve it. Only 3 restarts are allowed if in case something goes wrong within that 5 minutes. And it should stop smoothly at a distance of less than 20 centimeter from the box and avoid colliding with the box that can cause damage to the bot. Okay, so this is actually bhaiya, Niran bhaiya.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I don't think like it would be possible to avoid colliding with the box because the distance sensor is just malfunctioning if we are just even a bit away from the block. So
Yeah, then they can collide. It won't be a problem, I
okay,
guess.
yeah, so you can collide with the box if you want to, and that won't be a problem. So the again, the smoothness and the time in which you, so you'll here you'll have a lot of chance to improvise and do better than the others because there are a lot of ways to solve this problem. So the smoothness and the time will matter a lot in this round. And after a total of time of 5 minutes, the current position of the bot will be considered as the final position. So you can solve it in stages. It will be solved in stages. So even if you reach just the purple block after 5 minutes, then it will be considered, yeah, at least you have reached there. And if the team tries out multiple runs, the latest one will be considered as the final evolution. And again, the scoring rules will be disclosed only at the time of the event. And the disqualification, the rules remain same. Any kind of plagiarism will lead to disqualification, and any kind of manual interruption will also lead to disqualification. And if you want just a gist of how the PS would be solved, so here is your bot. Here are the 4 boxes that are kept. So we are moving from the green one to the blue one to the purple one to the red one, and I'll just run it for you. So here it just rotates at first and it tries to find the threshold, the green box, and find it. So yeah, once it is in the range of the camera and it sees it, then it moves towards the box. So it once hit it, it has reached there. Now it searches for another box. Now you see that blue box is hidden within the green box, so you have to see for it. So it'll move a little bit to the right, then it'll try to move. If once it gets in the range of blue box, then it'll move towards the blue box. You can increase or decrease the speed of the bot based on how you want it to function. Once it hit the blue box, it can move towards the purple one. And but yeah, I have the thresholding is being done side by side and I have windows that are showing that thresholding. Should I show them or not?
What are you saying about track bars?
No, not track bars, only thresholding. Like the
Yeah,
viewpoint of the
man.
camera and the thresholding.
हाँ दिखाओ.
Okay, I'll run it again and show it. So now it has found the rest box. As you can see, this was not at all efficient. It was rotating a bit too much. So you can go on and create your solutions to be as efficient as they can be. So it has stopped near the red box. So the PS has been completed. Now I'll just like to show you a thresholding windows. I won't say much about them. It's just the point of view of the camera. That is, wait a minute. So here the segmented image, if it is looking for green box, so it is the mask, either is the segmented image, here is the HSV image. So here you can see how only the green box is being visible to the camera and it's moving towards it with the help of its centroid or center of mass or whatever you say. Now it's searching for the blue box, it can't find it anywhere, so it will just move forward a bit. Then now it can see the blue box and now it will move towards it. So it's just a gist of it, how to solve the PS, and your mentors will be there to help you in if there is any confusion. Now the blue box is reached, now it goes for the purple one, and so on. So this will be the PS2 for you, and that's all I have from my side.
Yeah, guys. So that's it, I guess, for this workshop. If you guess anything, did we leave out?
Yeah. Not as such, like we both part is over, so yeah.
Yeah, and
Any doubts?
you,
Yeah.
you need to solve at least one of the PS1 or PS2, at least one to get a certificate from the club. Like try to solve at least one. There is no such qualification or something. You can try any of them, but you should be able to solve one of them, and both of them will be considered for scoring.
Yeah, so someone asked how does a robot restart in simulation? So there is a button I'll show just once. 1 minute I'll show. So is my screen
Yeah,
visible?
and Anurup, yeah, by the time it loads, yes. So yeah,
Yeah.
the Anurup has asked how a robot can malfunction in a simulator. So robot won't malfunction in the fact, our side, in the environment side, nothing will go wrong in a simulator because it's nothing but a piece of software, right? So how by malfunction or things like what we mean is whether your algorithm is flawed. So let's say in this PS1 it goes and gets in it's not able to recover from some collision, or it's just rotating about the axis because something is not properly thresholded, right? So that's what is the worst case scenario that will happen. So it won't be a flaw or anything from our side, the simulator developed side. It will be your code might driving it in a wrong fashion, right? So that's the utmost malfunction that can happen, and entirely because of your implementation. So ours has been tested by mentors and a lot of people, so it's working well and there is no problem as such. Yeah.
Yeah, so as someone asked, how does it like restart? So basically, you can reset the simulation. So right now, as you can see, the simulation is running for around like 1 minute and so 1 second and so. So in that time, what you can do is basically for pausing, you can do this. For fast forward, this button, and for reset, as you asked, this button. So basically, it reset the entire simulation. And for example, if I keep the robot here, right, and I save the world, right. So I saved the world. Now I reset it, so it will be here only. So basically, the last save when you reset it, it will go to the last saved arena, like whatever you saved last time. That will be the thing. So yeah, that is how you reset the simulation.
Yeah, Utkarsh, 5 minutes is the max time. So in that 5 minutes, you can restart at max 3 times. Running
Yeah,
your bot won't take much time, I guess. It will be a minute or so.
yeah. And one more thing, like when you will be running your bot in PS1, it will be running in fast forward mode. So just try using that. So like you can run it in fast forward mode in round one at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and on 13th and 14th, you'll be having your what is evaluations. You'll be given your time slots on 13th or 14th, and you'll be maybe in a video call. We'll check it. We'll check the code how it's running and all. So the dates will be Saturday and Sunday. First you will take it for round one. Then, if you want, we can also do it for round two.
Yeah, someone has asked how will they, without the access to the arena, how will they approximate the distance at which the robot should turn? Okay, so I'm taking up that question. So that is essentially not okay. If I'm not going to reveal. So the strategy that is being employed, right? That does not know the arena or the world around it. It is just iteratively seeing for the solution. Possibly, let me just ask Yash now. So Yash, the solution that you already wrote, right? Does it anywhere require
Yeah.
this distance?
No, there is no a requirement of the distance. Like you can easily use the practice arena and make a code for it, and it will easily be able to solve the final PS.
Yes. So give it a thought. We are not revealing anything. You can have discussions with your mentors, right? But as such, there is no need for that distance data because we do. So basically, we don't need the map of the entire arena to do what we are expecting, right? So it can be very easily done, and you can give it a thought, and and then if you are stuck and you have need some ideas, you can ask your mentors. But it's definitely possible, so don't worry.
Yeah, Vidit has a question. In the PS2, will the blocks be placed in the same place or a new configuration? Yeah, Vidit, it should not depend. Like wherever the blocks are placed, your code should work. But we will change the version, so you'll not hard code directory and make it run.
Yeah, this I think is a confusion everyone are having, Niran. So let's just give some perspective to them. So you guys, think more from the robot's perspective. So what we don't exactly need to know the position to go to it. So for example, from if you think from the robot's perspective, in the round one, end of the day, it's just going to see from the distance sensor what is the distance around me at every instant, right? So what is the nearest obstacle in every direction, and what essentially should I take? I should take such that there is where the distance is at the farthest, the obstacle is at the farthest, right? So that will be a simple strategy for round one, right? So I don't need to know the distance or how far I should go. All these things are insignificant, and in fact, this is something in PS2 also, as Raghav showed, right? So it just finds the target and it just orients itself and just moves straight, right? So that's it. So why should you exactly need the position of the box or the distance of the round one? All this is not required, right? So just think from the perspective of the robot and what are the sensors you have and how exactly will you make a decision. So based on the sensors, what should I motors do? And this is a loop: sensor, motor, action, and then again sensing, motor, action. So this is how you go. Yeah, Niran, someone has a question on how the event will be conducted. Probably you can brief it.
Just a minute. Hello? Okay, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, guys. So event this Saturday and Sunday we'll give each of the team some time slots. So there'll be some 5-10 minute time slots. You need to mostly will be in a video call, and you should run your code in the simulator and show it to us. And we'll see the timing of the bot and the smoothness and all, and we'll evaluate your run. And so, yeah, Loki, you want to say something?
No, you continue. I just wanted to add on. If you miss it out, I'll do it. Yeah.
Okay. And for the round two, we'll mostly have it after round one. Once you complete your round one evaluation runs, then we will have the round two ones. It also follows a similar procedure. We will be in a video call. We'll be checking your bot, how it's working in the simulator, and evaluate it. That's
Yes, and once let us say you solve the PS, right? So once you have a successful run, you will be asked to submit your solution. So basically, will it be okay to just submit the code, Nirant? That will be fine, no? We can just send a Google form or something. Once
yeah.
the
That's
person,
once you have
yeah.
completed.
Once you have completed and we see that your bot successfully runs, right? We will just ask you to submit your PI file, and then we will then do a plagiarism check. So whosoever are completing it, we will order them based on the merit, which is the speed and smoothness. And the people who are solving it will be given this test, what do you call plagiarism test, and you will be accordingly awarded, right?
But yeah, we will have to share our screen at that time.
Yeah. So we will actually see your thing in action. We will see your controller or solution in action, and then you have to submit the script, whatever you have written, right? You should submit that script, and we will manually check it. And
And
if
not
required, we will
exactly
also
screen share. Screen share has a lot of lag. Maybe we can do a direct video call and evaluate it. We'll also take your
yes.
codes and try running it if there is too much of lag
Of
your
course.
side.
So there, apart from the lag for the plagiarism, right? So just if let's say with the top 3 teams or something, then we will of course validate it in our copy. So we'll take your code, put it in our simulator and run it. And if it is not matching with the video results that you showed or something, then you will be penalized, right? So just keep that in mind. So video lag and all is not an issue. So just make sure your solution is authentic and creative and works.
Yeah, and Saksham has a question. Saksham, there is no selection as such. You can attempt to solve both the PS and you can do them individually. So, but prefer first try to solve PS1, then try go for PS2. It will be easier that way.
Yes, and optimal thing would be to do the best in both, because that's whom we will consider as a winner. If not, we will have a weighted sum of both rounds, and this and all will won't be enclosed now. The scoring and exact details will be told on the day of event, right? So it will be a weighted sum of your performance in both the events. So let's say one person performs very well in round 2 and he does not even solve round 1, then that's debatable, right? So he won't be considered a winner or something. So essentially, we want to have very good the winner, which would expected to have very good performances on both. But let's say in a very special case, when there is round 2, one person is performing very well, and then round 1 he didn't even attempt or something, then we will disclose it on the day of event. But we want you guys to actually solve both to win. But if you solve one of them, you will definitely get a participation. Is that right, Nidal?
Yeah, solve at least one of them to get a certificate. Yeah. Any more questions? If not, we can close the session here.